Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Duettmann. I run an organization called Foresight Institute. I did not found it. It was founded in 1986 in the Bay Area. It's a research organization that supports nanotechnology, neurotechnology, biotechnology, space technologies, and other technologies for the future, for beneficial futures, basically. But what we also always had really deep at the core of our mission is the intersection between crypto and AI, because we have many kind of like we have a big intersection with the early cypherpunk community, which I'm sure many of you here are familiar, including Mark Miller and Exabo, Hal Finney, and so forth. So we always had this relatively decentralized way to look at AI. And so I think I want to just tell you a few, I think, intersection points where I think crypto could really make a really, really big difference in AI. And I'm going to kind of speed run through a few of examples there. And they'll be a little bit perhaps more futuristic than some of the applications that are already being built. So a lot of it is still a bit more researchy. But I think it's really important. In the Bay Area, we worry a lot about artificial general intelligence, and I'm trying to go there, basically. So first and foremost, who has seen this Bankless Podcast with Eliezer Yudkowsky? I see a few hands here. So basically, in the podcast, he goes on a Bankless Podcast. Eliezer Yudkowsky, he's an AI safety researcher, and he makes a few interesting claims. The first one is that AGI is going to come very soon, artificial general intelligence. There's nothing really we can do about it. We're likely all going to die. But then I think the second really surprising thing about the podcast is that he goes onto a crypto podcast. He's an AI safety researcher and is mostly in the Bay Area and AI safety communities. And I was like, what is he doing? Really going to talk to the crypto community about. And I think it's interesting because I think it means that everyone working in crypto really has a really distinct role to play in making AGI go well. And it also kind of like making it go in ways that are more beneficial for more people. And so I'm going to kind of like tell you about a few of the examples and why I think that could work. First of all, this is my definition of artificial general intelligence. It's an artificially intelligent agent that displaces human civilization as the framework of relevance for intelligence and dominates the world. That's the question of like whether humans will be around at that point or not. Now, this looks super sci-fi. I know, like people usually just like shake their heads or like start giggling. But there's actually a few, I think, interesting developments that are kind of like happening, over the course of the past few years and are like now accelerating. That I think actually makes us wonder whether we're headed to that future, at least gradually. One of them is there's been a lot of mergers, so like a lot of like push for centralizing across individual AI building entities. So you had Microsoft and OpenAI really partnering up here, Google and Anthropic. And then Google Brain and DeepMind really like getting much, much closer in the past year. The second one, I think, is what an interesting trend is the trend to generalization. So you can see here a paper on sparks of AGI, early experiments with GPT-4. And that paper already came out earlier this year. So, there's probably like a lot more research on this, like now. But basically, they were comparing like whether, amongst all other things, but whether ChatGPT-4 already has some kind of theory of mind that is comparable with different kind of developmental stages of humans. And it really was quite shocking of like how kind of like generally intelligent it is and like what kind of like theory of mind it already has. So like there's specific benchmarks, and ChatGPT-4 was doing well or like scarily well on them. Next one up, we have this kind of motion towards more agency. Who here has played with AutoGPT or Baby GPT and so forth? Like anyone? Okay, a few. So basically, often kind of like the criticism that you get when you say that these agents will eventually become agentic is like, well, they have no actuators, they have no way of like actually affecting the world. That is definitely true, but they're now at least not just this one chatbot anymore, but like more and more they're like able to kind of like self-prompt themselves to basically like execute more complex tasks. Now, when can we expect AGI? This is an interesting question. So who here knows about Metaculus? Hands up. It's a forecasting community. Oh, yeah, of course you guys do. But basically, they asked the question of like, well, when will the first general AI systems be devised, tested, and publicly announced? And the community prediction, in June this year, was in March 28, 2032. That's really, really soon. And if you're not shocked now, then I think the most interesting part about this is like the same question had the year 2042 just a year ago. So that means it was a 10-year drop in timeline in a year. And so that's pretty insane. And it's many people that are actually working in these labs, that are on these platforms predicting and so forth. So like they do have some inside knowledge as well. Now, this is maybe to convince you that AGI, at least something like that, is kind of like gradually emerging. But then why should we worry about it? Why should this concern us? And I want to say that there's actually three potential kind of categories of risks. And I want to say that crypto can actually help with all of them. And so first one is InfoSec. And infosecurity is not often thought about as a kind of subset of AI, but at least many people in the FOSSA community, the cypherpunk community, and so forth, there's really this notion of you can't really have secure AI that executes what you want if you don't have a computer security base for it, right? Either an attacker may be able to steal it, or once AIs get more advanced, they may be able to actually break out and explore their own vulnerabilities and eventually make their way out of whatever code you try to confine them in. And there's a lot of problems from hardware to actually software operating systems and so forth, but it's a really, really big one, and currently we're not doing a good job on computer security. Second one is, even if we solve this unsolvable problem right now, then we have alignment. And I think alignment is aligning an AI with human values. And that's actually really tricky because I have a somewhat of philosophy of science degree, and if you go through trolley dilemmas, or if you look at the history of philosophy, humans don't agree what human values are. And then even if we did, we would have to have this process by which we communicate these values to alien minds that didn't grow up in our biological evolutionary environment and that share none of our cultural evolutionary context in the way that we do. So I think it's actually a really, really tricky problem. But that's the thing that is mostly worked on by AI safety researchers, really. And then the last one is cooperation, and that's more social and human cooperation. So given the fact that those first two problems are really, really difficult, we need a lot of time to solve them, and it would be really good to cooperate, across people that are building the technologies to solve them, rather than enter AI arms races or zero-sum dynamics and so forth. So this one is more of a social one, but I think crypto can actually help with all of them. And now I want to tell you how. Let's start with InfoSec. First one, I don't know if any of you have been following, if you're on the dark web, there's now a lot of ChatGPT generated potential attacks that you can just buy. So that basically really decreases the kind of level of knowledge that you have to have as a bad actor to be able to break into systems. This is a ChatGPT generated one, but there's tons of others out there now. So on the short one, at least, AI may worsen the offense-defense balance just because it allows script kiddies and people that are usually not very technical to actually chain together a bunch of different attacks and produce more elaborate attacks. Second one, and this is more important, private labs lack the defense capacity, especially vis-a-vis nation states. So this one, for example, OpenAI recently launched this really amazing cybersecurity grant program, and they're giving away $1 million. And that sounds like a lot, at least to me. But if you compare this with the sheer capacity that nation states have at their hand when they're trying to attack, then I think it is just it pales in comparison to that. And in this book, this is how they tell me how the world ends. Nicole Perloff kind of goes through the history of many of the kind of existing attacks, and she really points out that many of the U.S. Many of the US intelligence agencies have been buying zero-day exploits on the dark web for a while, and they've created this kind of market. And it's not just US governments that are buying these now, it's governments from around the world. And so, you can really they kind of stockpiled them to be used at a later date when it really matters. And given that we've kind of throttled GPU access to China and are becoming a little bit more adversarial in our language, at least I'm speaking from a US context here, it's not unlikely that nation states may eventually use these 0 days that they've collected on many of the AI building companies to kind of launch an orchestrated attack. And I think that would be really terrible, because computer security and even a cyber attack could lead to other collateral risks, like real kinetic warfare, for example. Anyway, so that's a really, really big problem. So how can crypto help? Well, I think, first of all, just from a mindset perspective, Bruce Schneier here, who knows Bruce Schneier? He's the author of one of the leading crypto textbooks, and he basically says, good engineering involves thinking about how things can be made to work. The security mindset involves thinking about how things can be made to fail. And I think this mindset is really what we need, and this mindset is what many of you guys have, and we need it more in AI. It's a very specific mindset of like where you're not happy even if you've encrypted your stuff like multiple times around, if you've red teamed it and so forth. So I think the mindset is really important that you guys bring, and it's a little bit, I think, still lacking in the AI safety community where people focus a lot on alignment. So I think you have a lot to offer here. Second one, I think naturally you kind of already really good at red teaming, because if you just look at kind of the crypto ecosystem, the top 10 biggest cryptocurrency thefts by estimated losses as of August 2022, you have one of like 614 million, and you can correct me, like there's probably a few of them in there that like should be in there, a few of them that maybe shouldn't be in there, but let's just say there's like millions of dollars of bug bounties hanging out there if you are able to break into an insecure system. And so this kind of like natural red teaming means that many projects that survive long-term in the crypto community are actually the ones that are more secure. It's just this kind of like evolutionary pressure that drives to that. And I think we need to apply this type of red teaming mindset more to machine learning. And this is Cristiano, also another really wonderful thinker in AI, and he really like is urging people, and that was already in 2016, and it's now already being implemented a bit, but to really like use more of a red team approach to not only apply to security, but also to red team machine learning systems. And I think given the fact that there's a ton of red teaming and elbowing already going on in crypto, this kind of like attitude should really be applied much more in the AI community too. Okay, second, how can crypto actually help with AI alignment? Well, so those are a little bit more complicated to explain, but I'm going to give it a shot. I think actually the notion of avoiding AI collusion, which is a problem in AI safety, is kind of similar to problems like the Sybil attack. And so I think here's just an example of potentially like one of the systems in which we may want to have this. So AI safety via debate is, who knows it in here? Okay, then I explain it. Basically, it's a version from OpenAI, like an approach to AI safety, by which you have two AIs debating each other about what's in an image, and you have a human that judges which of the AIs is correct. And they basically say that's a relatively good approach to safety, because rather than you having to judge an AI, the AIs judge each other, and you just have to figure out who's correct, who's aligned with you. Well, it never says if like either of them are aligned with you. They could both be colluding towards something behind your back. So that's this kind of problem, the general problem of collusion in AI safety. And that I think is really, really similar to many people thinking crypto about Sybil attacks, generally about deception, about like, basically like, an actor representing as many and so forth. And I think that these types of like, the experience that many people here frankly have by trying to avoid these attacks is really useful for trying to avoid collusion amongst AI systems too. Next one up, again, like an interesting one for AI safety. Anthropic's kind of like one of their AI safety approaches. Anthropic is one of the main Google competitors. One of their main AI safety approaches is called constitutional AI. Who here has heard of that? Okay, then I'll also briefly line it out. It's basically like you have a constitution, a system of principles and laws. You give it to one AI, and it uses that to judge the behavior of another. And so it's pretty like, it is really based on this kind of constitutional thinking of having like one actor check another one based on a set of rules and principles that you agree on. Now, that is really, really similar to how many people work in crypto. And right, like if you just look at the blockchain, if you look at like, like how the entire checks and balances system is set up in crypto, you have a lot of this kind of like checks and balances process in place. You have this kind of constitutional system thinking. And if you think, for example, about in the security community, things like POLAR, like principle of least authority, which basically means that you should never give an entity more authority than it absolutely needs to carry out a specific task. Like principles like that are like best practices in these communities would be really good to also apply when AI systems check each other. This one is even more difficult to explain, but I'll just point out, the first one is a paper on planting undetectable backdoors in machine learning models, and the second one below that is a slide that Scott Aronson, he's a quantum computing guy, basically said where, well, if we can already plant undetectable backdoors in machine learning models, which is usually something people are worried about, can we use them for good? Can we maybe use them to kind of like have not really an off switch, but like a control mechanism implanted in an AI system without it even being able to detect that there is one? And so there's these like interesting cryptographic solutions now to potential safety problems in AI. Now, last one, how can crypto help with cooperation? So cooperation is this problem of like, we need to kind of like have a system of cooperation or coordination architectures in place somehow as entities are building these models to like avoid really, really bad scenarios. This one is a total mouthful to explain. I'm just going to kind of point you to the paper down there, but Emma Blümke, Ben Garfig, and a few others at GovAI did this fantastic job at writing a paper about structure and transparency in AI governance. And they basically say, well, if we don't just want to have one government kind of like controlling all the models that are being generated, are there alternatives? Maybe there could be a regulatory market in which different agents kind of like verify each other's models. Now, what do you need to set that up? Well, you need a way in which I can verify that like your model isn't like it doesn't go over some of the, let's say, like thresholds for danger that we both agreed on. And in order to do that, you're not going to want to share your data with me. You're not going to share your weights necessarily with me. But it would be really good to have it actually encrypted at the source. So basically, all that we're verifying is just these kind of like meta statements about the fact that the work that we're producing, the models that we're writing, is actually like, meets the specific safety standards that we, let's say, agreed on. And so they have this kind of like parallel between classic data privacy scenario and an AI governance analogy. And it's really an amazing paper. I would definitely recommend reading it. It's pretty fresh and it's great. Next one up, we have private machine learning to collaborate on sensitive data. So now let's imagine we don't only just want to check each other's work and see that like no one's doing something bad, but can we also use cryptography to actually collaborate on something good with AI? And here there's a lot of papers on this recently. This one is from one of our fellows, Georgios Kaisis, and he is basically thinking about private machine learning techniques to collaborate on sensitive data. Now, this is, I think, really important because AI, the way that it's currently being built, has like a really competitive advantage at big data, right? That's what crypto isn't really good at, right? It's just like, it's just not got to quite cut it. But there are a few use cases, like for sensitive information, like for finance, for healthcare, where big data cannot, like there is just no big data on it because it's literally sensitive. And so these types of data sources could be used with privacy-preserving machine learning approaches, right? And so here you really have a competitive advantage if you know cryptography, and because that is literally the only way to use these data sinks. And data is running more and more sparse over the AI development pipelines. So it's an important one. Anyway, so this is a solution in which basically like two different entities, or maybe multiple ones, can collaborate on a global problem that they're solving. Let's just say it's longevity. Like pick your favorite problem that you always wanted solving, but where you couldn't because of the sensitivity of the data involved. And they can basically collaborate by like really just computing like at the node, or using differential privacy, using homomorphic encryption, federated learning, like all the cryptography techniques that like a few of you may be familiar with. I'm happy to discuss them more like one-on-one after, but he basically goes through a lot of them and like shows how they may apply for people to actually collaborate on more stuff. And I think that's ultimately really exciting because it means that we don't have to centralize. Let's say we want to solve this problem. We don't have to centralize into one big actor, but we can still stay centralized, specialized, but we can collaborate when necessary on the problems that we want to achieve. And I think in general, these types of cryptographic cooperation regimes can bring us a little bit further away from the singleton scenario, where you have an AGI that displaces human civilization as the framework of relevance for intelligence and dominates the world, like that thing that I started with. And it can bring us more towards this intelligent cooperation notion, in which networks of humans and AIs cooperate to compose their knowledge into civilization superintelligence. So we can have this more intelligent cooperation notion to AI, rather than thinking about it as this one AGI agent. Now, this is my summary, and I just want to say, yes, you working in crypto could help with InfoSec, alignment, and cooperation. If you want to know more about the ideas kind of in more depth, we wrote a book on this. Me, Christine Peterson, who co-founded Foresight, and Mark Miller, one of the early cypherpunks, basically laying out a few crypto tools and a few other like legal tools, frankly, to help humans and AIs cooperate better. We have annual workshops. They're more like hackathons on the intersection between cryptography, security, and AI. We just had our one for 2023, but the next one should be announced next week. It's early next year, so that can be seen from our website in probably like a week or so. So if you're interested in building basically tools at this intersection, please, please, please do check those out. They're in the Bay Area mostly, but we also have a few in London. And then we have a grant program that we just launched. So we're giving away $1 million per year in 3 different categories for AI for AI safety. One of them is newer technology, whole brain emulation, and lo-fi uploading to AI safety. That shouldn't concern you. That's for my newer tech community. But the other two may be interesting to you. Security, cryptography, and auxiliary approaches for InfoSec and AI safety. Please come talk to me if you're interested in applying to that. It's also on the website. And safe and multipolar AI scenarios. So if you now have an idea and you kind of want to apply but don't have really the funds to go for it, feel free to do it that way. And finally, if you're interested in all the other technologies that I mentioned, biotech, neurotech, nanotech, and space, please join our Vision Weekends. They're held in a castle outside of Paris and in 3 iconic Bay Area locations across all of our tech tracks. And they're at the end of this year in November and December. If you want to talk, then please just chat me up. I'll be here for the next 2 days. I'll be co-chairing the AI Symposium tomorrow, and I'm always very eager to talk. Thanks a lot for your time. I hope this was somewhat useful, and thanks for sitting through the sprint. Thanks, everyone.